everyone. Welcome all to the GameCritics.com podcast. It's episode 21. I'm your host, Tim Spaeth. Joining me this week are Chi Kong Liu.
Hey Tim, how's it going, guys?
And Mr. Brad Gallaway.
Hey, everybody.
And Mike Bracken.
Good evening, everyone.
Very excited to welcome our guest this week. It's Geneva Chen. He is the designer of the award-winning games Flow and Flower, among many others. He's the co-founder of That Game Company. Geneva Chen, welcome to the GameCritics.com podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. And thank you very much for the dramatic introduction of my name.
I want to talk about your name, and we were debating the pronunciation. Do we want to call you Genova? Do we want to call you Geneva? And I'm not even sure which one I said, but that is a name that you chose based on Final Fantasy VII, right?
Yes. Well, I prefer the first one you pronounced, Genova.
Genova.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I think most people will think it's pretty dumb to choose this name. I saw some people online would say, "Oh my God, his parents is probably awesome, right?" Fortunately, no, I just picked it. So.
And so was it something about that game in particular that caused you to choose that?
Well, it's more like when I first came to the United States about 6 years ago, I was very, very proud of my Chinese name, which is Xinghan, which means the Milky Way, which is very cool.
How do you say it in Chinese?
Xinghan.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so it's very hard to pronounce for Westerners, right? And it's also hard to write it because it starts with an X, and so people are always like, is this Xinghan or something, So at the first, I was like, yeah, every time I will correct everybody's pronunciation and have them to, read my name through multiple times. Hopefully they will remember my name. But after about one semester and my writing professor still don't know what my name is, I decided to give, I think, well, I just need to pick something that people can remember, something short, something unique, right? Because my last name is Chen, which is one of the biggest last name, in China, probably in the world. So if you are Jackie Chen or Jason Chen, you're probably going to have Jason Chen 1148 at gmail.com or something like that. I just think, well, why don't I just pick something short and unique? And Genova is this character, and it's also my StarCraft account while I was still in high school, playing games. And just, it's been my user account for a long time. I just decided to pick that. And also, I Googled Genova. There's nobody except a dog at the time somewhere called Genova. So yeah, I mean, I picked that name. And partially, yes, I do really enjoy Final Fantasy VII. And my best gaming buddy in my high school, and I talk about the game all the time. And he named himself Cloud. And I was like, no, you picked the best character. And I don't want to be Sephiroth because I don't even know how to pronounce his name. And I don't know how to spell it. It's just too loud.
Well, there are like 10 million Sephiroth guys
Right,
online
right.
too. So
So I think, well, since Sephiroth and the Cloud are both children from Genova, pick something, bigger and more badass is probably going to win over my friend. And that time I just say, all right, I'm going to be Genova. And then there were people challenging me, say, hey, Genova is a female. But if you do read the story of Final Fantasy, Genova is a genderless creature, right? So that's kind of my way to justify this name. Anyway.
So my question for you is this then. When you're traveling in gaming circles or attending conferences or talking to other designers, how many times have you had to answer the are you named after Jenova from Final Fantasy VII question. You must have told
almost every time.
Yeah.
Yes.
You must have
Yes,
told
every
that story
time.
like 200 times, would be my guess.
Yeah, but every time there will be something different in the details,
So, Jenova, you said you're a lifelong gamer.
Yes.
And at what
Well,
go ahead, I'm
at
sorry.
what points, right? I think it was 7. It's not really lifelong because before 7, there's not even computer in China yet. I think at the 7, my dad bring me to this. I don't even know how to translate this. Basically, they have like a special place for children to go to study. And one of the classes they are offering is a computer class. So I get my hands on Apple II computers at age 7. I officially started at 10. But at the time I went there and I was looking at these, like monocolor green, display of Apple II computers.
Sure.
And the first thing I saw was some kind of platforming game. I don't even know what the name that game is. But I started gaming from there, pretty much.
And then at what point along the path do you decide that you might like to actually try your hand at designing these games?
Actually, quite early. I think it was maybe 11. Because I'm not really interested in programming, but my dad forces me to do so. Because he's in the computer science field. And at the time I really into drawing. I like to draw stuff, but to my parents, and they just felt, if you learn drawing, eventually you're just gonna be a beggar. You're gonna be a homeless people painting stuff on the street. So
That's funny. My mom and dad said the same thing to me.
yeah.
I guess that's the same all over the world.
Yeah, and then I was pretty much dragged out of the drawing class to this computer class. I might be crying, I can't remember, but this time I went to this class, I saw the game, I don't have any complaint anymore. Because every time we go to the class, before the class starts, all the kids there are playing games. That's pretty much why I want to go to the class. And so very soon we start to learn like BASIC and Pascal, all these programming language. And as kids we start trading games. That time it was on floppy disks, so we kind of like exchange disks and bring it home to play games. And we would talk about, hey, maybe we can make a game. So at the time we were playing this game made by KOEI. You guys probably know KOEI making Dynasty Warriors.
Yes.
But
She is their #1 fan.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's right.
But at the time, KOEI their most popular franchise is the Three Kingdom strategy games. And so we were playing it, but it's all in Japanese, all in English. We were like, well, at least we can make our own version of a Chinese version, right? And then, so we talk about how we want to make this game. At the time, we were totally basically have no knowledge about developing softwares. We know how to write code. So I was, in charge of the graphics for the game. At the time, if you've no programming like BASIC or Pascal, there's not that much graphics interface. If you want to draw something, you have to basically draw points and lines. So I spent about 2 weeks every day, besides going to school, at home drawing the Chinese map, the map of China by drawing lines and axes. And I finally finished, my line drawing, in code. They're all code. Then there's no Photoshop at the time. And I was very proud and I brought it to the class to show my friends. But then it turns out that disk which I store my map is somehow damaged. If you remember, 5-inch floppy disks, they get damaged all the time, right? And that's pretty much the moment where I decided, screw it, I just want to play a game. And I haven't made any game since then until I start my college, actually.
Was it in college that you met your current partner at that game company?
No, that was grad school. College, yeah, I went to college in China, in Shanghai, which was my hometown. Um, it was quite interesting because at the time I never thought about, turning game development into my career. Because just again, my parents was like, you should play less game and do something meaningful, do something real, right? Game's gonna take you nowhere. Um, yeah, and so I was in the college and was very interested in the digital art. Because I'm getting bored with programming. Because think about it, I start programming at 10, went into college at 18. It's kind of like 8 years programming. It's kind of getting old on me, and I always like to draw. So in college, I actually get a lot of time to do digital, art. Like a CG, 3D animation. Um, Pixar's movies, have a lot of influence on me. So I was all into like making animations, but then I run into this guy in a computer game club, and he is in the kind of like art department in my university, and but he all he wants to do is coding. So he spent all his time writing programs in the art department, and he says, I really want to make games, but I need artists to help me making these, models and art sets. So I said, well, sure, I will help you out. We play all these games from America, from Japan, but why isn't there any, game made in mainland? That's just ridiculous. It's not like we're dumb or something. Why can't we just do that? Um, so we actually spent a lot of time. I remember, there was so much passion in it that, like three of us would stay during the summer vacation in school. We don't even go home. We just stay in one dorm and we just keep working. But back then, in Shanghai, it's really hot. It's probably 95 or something every day, and you have like full computer, full blown, spanning out heat. So we gather all the fan we have, and we just work together. And it's so hot, so we only wear underwears. So basically, it's three naked guy in one dorm for the entire summer, and we just sleep on the floor working on our first video game. And somehow after that, we just get addicted to it. It's just a sense of accomplishment and the pride. Like nobody in China was doing that. Not even just in college, even just independent game maker. We'd never heard of those. So we just, keep doing it. We made about 3 games by the time I graduate. But at the time, I was more feeling like enjoying making the art of the game. I really haven't to think too much about how the game design is going to be. It's more like we know, hey, we really like Diablo. Let's make a game like Diablo. We really like, Zelda. Let's make a game like Zelda. It's more like mimicking. It's kind of like when you first start learning drawing, you just kind of follow other people's drawing. But by the time I graduate, I was kind of like, our game, the tech is pretty good. It's as good as the American games, and the art is good too. But the game is crap to play. Like it's just not a good game. And
Did those games get published commercially at all?
No, we just released it as like freeware online so people can download it.
Okay.
It's like the fact Chinese people can make video game is already an accomplishment. We don't even think about money. So, yeah, so that's basically where I was at. But I always just thought, I want to be able to make digital art that can touch and move people, and because all the great CG movies, animations I've seen, and so when I went to USC, for my grad school, I was actually thinking about applying for the animation department in the cinema school in USC. But then they were like, hey, you have all these years of engineer background, all these awards in programming. Why don't you go to our new program called Interactive Media? So to me, at the time, I thought it was like, they probably think my art is not good enough, so they want to kick me out. and then they say, well, if you are in that department, you can still take all the classes in the animation department. I was like, okay, yeah, this is a reasonable compromise. I will go there, and then we will see. But just because of this incident, um, now I'm here. I'm making video games. It's quite interesting just how life turns out. Even though I never really thought about become a game maker, but everything I did in the past does add up to what I do today. It's just very interesting thing to look at, how life is formed.
Sure.
Hey, Genova, can I ask you a question real quick?
Uh-huh.
So considering that you've had this long history, and I think that you are pretty well known in the States, at least in our critical circles. I mean, I think everyone has either heard of or played Flow and Flower. I mean, you're kind of a famous guy. So what do your mom and dad think about that? They told you to not do games and not do art and that kind of thing, and they wanted you to do something else. I'm sure something more, lucrative. Now that I think you're pretty successful as far as game developers go. What do your mom and dad think?
Well, so they don't know what game is. My parents, they don't even watch movies. Uh, so there's a huge gap for them to understand what I'm doing. But whenever their son gets onto newspaper or something, on the website, they like to see it, and so they spend most of their time because they're both retired. Um, I think they Google me all the time these days. Yeah, it's to them what their son is really doing seems doesn't really matter. As long as their son seems to be happy and seems to be successful, I think they're happy with that.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, pretty much because of that, my dad can't win me over on reasoning anymore.
Which I think is probably ultimately every parent's dream, is for their children to surpass them in some way. So I'm sure he's very proud. So the games you are best known for, I think most people know Flow and Flower. Prior to that, you released Cloud.
hmm
Um, Talk to us about, well, I guess, your games could be described as certainly experimental games designed to evoke emotion. At least that's how I would perceive them. But how would you describe your general design philosophy?
Um, I think, first of all, I think I am a very, very lucky guy. Um, because I have known so many people who are more talented than me and who work even harder than me, but they were not at the position where I get to make a game commercially to release them on a commercial console. Um, and to me, I felt this luck comes with great responsibility. We went to this, interactive media grad school program at USC, where all day our professor told us that you are here not because you just want to get a job once you graduate. You are here to push the boundary of this art form, of this medium, to push it forward. And after 3 years of studies, they pretty much made us feel like we are the specialists in this field. And I just feel like if I am working, in this industry, I should be fulfilling what our professor expected us, is to trying to push the boundary of interactive art into what we consider as a better future. Um, so, when we start to get this chance, when Kelly and I started the company, we got this, business deal with Sony. What are we gonna do? We think about all kinds of games we can make, but we wanted to do something that can push the boundary of games, in public's, impressions, or in the critics' impressions. what games can be, what games can communicate as an art form. Um, and so when we pick the content for our games, we always think about, is there anything new here? Is there anything that people haven't seen here? Is there something we believe that will be beneficial for this medium to have? So recently, you probably have heard my talks about emotions, like how we feel the type of emotional experience video game offer are very kind of I would say limited in a small areas. Well, if you look at other medium, mature medium like film or literature or music, their genres are usually divided by feelings, and they have a wide variety of feelings. And we really think video game, for entertainment, um, almost all entertainment are about fulfill people's emotional need. When you're sad, you want something to cheer you up. When you are very exhausted, you want something to calm you down and relax you. When you're bored, you want to have excitement. When you're kind of letting down, you want to have a sense of accomplishment. And I think games were very good at creating a sense of accomplishment and excitement. Power fantasy was what game is very good at, and what the majority of the game market was looking for, because most of them were teenagers and early 20s, and people who are young, they like to have powers, but they not necessarily like to have responsibilities. But I think as the audience are growing, because I remember when I first entered the US, I went to a GDC at 2004, and people were talking about how the average game players are about 25. But recently I heard the average game player's age is about 35. If you're 35, you definitely have passed that line where power fantasy is the only thing you want. And I think that because of that, emotions that will appeal to more mature audience will be something necessary to add to this medium. Otherwise, if game only appeal to the young generations, it wouldn't become, I would say, a mature art form where everybody embrace it. Am I clear?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I was just thinking about what you're saying, and I was thinking, wow, that's really insightful, and that's something that you don't really hear very many developers talking about. I'm sorry, we're just, I think we're all kind of collectively stunned a little bit there. I don't know about you guys, but
Yeah,
I
definitely.
wanted to ask, now that you've established this positioning, how did you get, how did that whole deal, with Sony come about to allow you to put yourself in that position to make the kind of games that you're making right now, actually?
Uh,
I mean, I
well,
know you said luck had a big factor in that, I understand, but can you talk a little
yes.
specifically about that?
So yeah, I think luck is still pretty much the major reason of it. I mean, the fact that I went to USC is another one. So before I entered the third year of my grad school program at USC, I was still thinking about, I'm gonna graduate soon. Where am I gonna find a job, or can I find a job? Um, and I was looking around, at the different big studios. I was thinking, well, who am I gonna work for? But then in the third year, we had a class called the Business of Interactive Media. At the time was taught by Bing Gordon, who's at the time was the CEO of EA. And he basically walked us through like what it's needed to start a business, in video games. You need to find, publishers, you need to find investors, lawyers, and all these things, right?
It would be a guy from Electronic Arts to teach that class, right?
Right. And then, a very important thing I learned from that class is just that you can, first of all, you need to know how to pitch an idea to other people, how to sell an idea so that they are excited and they wanted to give you money to do it. Um, Secondly, you don't need to have money to start a business, which was my preconceived notion. That is, you have to be work for 5 to 10 years, save up enough money, have enough experience to start a company. But after that class, it's kind of like an eye-opening experience, and they actually ask us to pitch like fictional ideas and make presentation for your game ideas in the class, and then they will have like publisher investors come in to actually rate your presentation. And at the time, I was getting #1 in the class, which kind of boost my ego that I believe maybe if I do pitch a game, some people will actually believe in it. So my classmate Kelly and I were in the same class. So near graduation, I was talking to her. I was saying, because she and I worked on cloud, and we really kind of feel like cloud has inspired us so much. We wanted to have a lot more players know and experience this kind of experience. So we were thinking, is it possible for us to pitch cloud to a publisher? And we both think that's almost impossible because there was no example established in the past where some student coming out of school will pitch a multi-million-dollar project and get funding to start a company. It's like if you ask me today, I would say that's totally impossible. But at the time, we were so naive that we decided actually, we should try it. So we pitched to so many people, and it's just pretty lucky that we get to pitch it at 2006 because that's the year where Sony and Nintendo was launching their console at November. And they both have digital distribution, and they both are dying for content on these new distribution platforms. So if we would pitch it a year before or a year after, I don't think we will have any chance. And also John Hyde, who was the head of Sony External Development, he's a USC alumni. I guess that helps a little bit. How much, I don't know, but it's certainly something that, if you graduate from USC, you would know. It's like a USC mafia. But so, yeah, because of all these luck and coincidence, the timing and the people, like we pitched almost to all the major publishers, Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft, all the third publishers, even overseas publishers. And in the end, we find Sony, and that was, it's kind of like, the chance was so low, but we actually found it. It's hard to explain how we made it. Yeah.
Wow, that sounds like a pretty incredible string of circumstances. You must really be, lucky. I mean, of course you're skilled and all that, but it does sound like a very fortunate circumstance.
Yeah, because we went to like independent game festivals all the time, and we know there were very talented student teams before us and after us. It's just they are not graduating that year, and we were the lucky one. It's very much, it's kind of like Chairman Mao used to say. He said, I didn't make the history of China. It's the history of China made me. If I don't exist, someone else will be sitting on this chair saying this to you. And I think the timing creates people, and I think this change from only retail game to digital distribution will make a lot of new developer, a new, totally different life.
Sure. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what's it like working with Sony, because it's such an interesting position. Because when at the end of Flower, when I went through the credits, right, it kept going and going. I was like, wow, this is for an independent, because I'm thinking, independent studios are made up of like 2 or 3 guys, and this credit just kept going and going, right?
Well, I don't know if you can tell how many of them are actually from that game company. It's pretty much the first pit, that's us. And after that pit, the second pit is the actual Sony people we work in a daily basis. But then after that, then we have all the kind of bureaucracy built on top of it. And then Sony overseas and, people from Sony Japan who playtested the game, people from Europe who translate the game. I mean,
Right.
all these people, yeah, that's how big the list is.
So what's it like on a day-to-day basis working with Sony then?
I think it's really lucky because at the time we were working with John Hyde and like basically they started their new group for the PlayStation Network. It was a very small group, only 3 of them. George Wising and Rusty, and we basically kind of, at the very beginning on Flow, we were just basically sitting next to their desk. Kind of like an incubation. We are using their office and equipment to make Flow. It was kind of stressful because, they are just watching over you, see what you're doing every day. But then, as the team starts to build bigger, then we get our own office. It was quite small, but at the time we get to make video game. What else can beat this? So it was all very, very happy. And during the time we were making Flower, that's actually when I really get to interact with Sony, because during the Flow time I was still on Spore. So I didn't get to work on it. But when I was working in Flower, I have my first-hand experience with Sony. I think it's quite lucky because we pitched Flower. And when we pitched Flower, we say we want to make a video game to give you a sense of spreading love, a sense of being immersed in the nature. It's kind of like they don't even know what you're talking about. and yes, if you're good at knowing how to make God of War or other Killzone games, you don't necessarily know how to make this Flower game. I mean, we don't know either, right? So it's kind of like we're just looking at each other. So, well, I guess you guys know what you're doing. Make sure it's a good game, right?
Duh.
Yeah. And if you can get anything to explode while you're spreading love, fit it in there. Fit it in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I think first of all, the designer George Wising from the publisher side is very open-minded. So it's kind of like, rather than feel like they are kind of overwatching or whether you're doing a good job, it's more like we are kind of trying to explore something we don't know about. And the relationship between me and him is never like, like he's my mentor or something. It's more like we are peer designers who are all curious about things we don't know, and we are, kind of giving each other ideas about what that could be. I mean, basically, the only time where Sony really told us to do something was when we released Flow. We were experimenting with the tilt-sensitive controllers. And there are concerns from the marketing saying, well, if you don't support a stick control, the gamers will complain. And the fact is the gamer does complain. But at the time, we were really kind of, insist that we need to force it to be tilt-sensitive because the game, if you play with the stick, it was very easy, and if you play with tilt, it's a little bit challenging. But if we tweak the game for the stick, then tilt will be almost impossible to play. But if we tweak it for the tilt and you play with stick, it will be too boring because it's so easy. So at the time, they got we don't agree with what the publishers say, so they got David Jaffe coming in to play our game, and David Jaffe agreed with us. So they were, because at the time he was still on God of War, right? So he's like the senior creative director coming in to give us advice, and so we won that fight. And pretty much from that point on, getting Flower be motion control only is a no problem.
Genova, can I ask you, your games, like you described, you kind of fight this uphill battle with the people at Sony, and fortunately you won. And I think your games are great so far. But I wanted to ask, how do you feel your games have been received? Because I think it's pretty common knowledge that they're pretty unconventional. They're pretty outside the normal parameters of what most people expect game design to be. So how do you feel that your games are received, and do you feel successful with both Flow and Flower?
So I can say I look at the reviews and in like two perspectives. So first, it would be from like my own perspective as a creator. Um, I don't really care about the reviews as a creator. I care about what people write to me. And since back then when I was making Cloud, there are people writing email to me says, I don't usually do this, but I played your game and I cried for your game. It's such a beautiful thing, and I really wish you can keep doing what you're doing. That's like the most rewarding thing I've ever had in my life. And the reason I'm making game is pretty much because of that. Um, and so for Flow and Flower, I mean, especially Flower, I get emails from people who are, you know, 9 years old or 60 years old telling me, especially the older people, like, 55 or something, telling me how the game really, really touched them. It was just amazing because, I didn't expect my game can reach people who are in that age, and I never really thought I would be able to communicate something that you know older people can actually understand. Um, so to me, it's just like I'm really spoiled with these females, and yeah, and I just really enjoy what I'm doing, and I hope I don't disappoint these people who send email to me, um, ask me to make more games just like that. But then there's the critics reviews, which, from my second perspective, looking at the feedbacks I actually care about is, as a game company founder and someone who actually care about this industry, and the future of video games. Um, I was pretty pleased because, if you look at the review between Flow and Flower, it's about 2 years apart. And while I was working on Flow, um, the review was quite mixed when it's first released. It's, Flow as one of the first downloadable titles. There's a lot of reviews that this game is just way too short. Um, but, like after 2 years, I don't think that there will be people literally saying, why don't I just play, what's the one they were giving? Oh, what's that big game when PS3 first launched?
Resistance?
Resistance, yeah. Why would I buy this crappy game over Resistance? They were comparing our game to a disc game, and saying we don't have enough content. And if you look at the Metacritics on Flow, you have very high scores, but then you also have very, very low scores. At the time, we were kind of frustrated to see these low scores, but we kind of, yeah, it's kind of new. Nobody really are familiar with this. But then 2 years later, when we released Flower, I mean, the game is probably shorter than Flow, but I think people generally would say, even though the game is short, it's still a great experience. And I think, it's just like how much people get used to downloadable games. And also, I think a deeper experience from Flower, which is kind of different than Flow, is being able to make up the shortness of a game. I mean, to me, people say it's short, but it's great. It's a great sign for me because I don't believe in making a 40 hours game for adults, because I just don't think they have that much time to waste on this thing if it's not deep enough, and like for me, I think if a game like Flower gets appreciated, which it did, it's a great sign for not only like the gamers, but also I think the critics. It's it's a sign of that we are getting mature, and our tastes are getting mature, and we care about things differently than how we care about things 5 or 10 years ago.
I actually had a question here, if I can jump in for a second. Now that you've had this success with Flower and Sony and everything, are they still going to allow you to basically make the kind of games you want to make, even though something like Flower is not like a Killzone? Or do you ever worry that they're going to come to you at some point and say, well, that's nice that you made Flower and we love that you do this stuff, but we want you to make this big commercial traditional game? And would you be interested in doing that if they did?
Well, they would never do that because we are too small to do a big commercial game.
But even if they were trying to like put you in with another, a bigger team or something like that, would you still be interested, or are you going to stay kind of where you are, do you think?
Interesting. I mean, we are not part of Sony, so they can't really kind of say, "Can you work with our internal team or something?" But I see your point. It's like, I don't know. I mean, our goal at that game company is to, like push the boundary of the games. And almost if there's no risk, there's no boundary pushing, right? I mean,
Right.
our game is going to be risky, and for a business person, putting a AAA budget on a risky concept is just never a good idea. But thanks to digital distribution, the budget of these games can be a lot smaller, and so the amount of risky content you can put in there to experiment with is a lot higher. And I think right now the team members at that game company are all very interested in risky things. They want to try something unknown so they can feel like they are learning. And I think we wouldn't grow too fast, because if we go too fast, then we have to sacrifice the experimental risks to commercial sustainability, because you can't just afford 20 or 30 people to, do something you don't know about. That's just not a good business model.
So financially, are things working out for you right now that you should be able to continue what you guys are doing?
Well, it depends, right? So there are very successful indie developers, like the guy who made Braid or The World of Goo. Their financial was quite successful, so that they don't have to rely on external investment to make their next game. But we are not in that situation. We still need investment to make our next game. So we are very much in the same situation we were when we graduated from school. We have good ideas, but we don't have money. We are looking for people who believe in the idea to invest us to pull it off. The only difference is we have better reputation than what we had before. People often ask, "What company? That game company? What company?" Anyway,
Who's on first, right?
Well, if it wouldn't be a conflict of interest, we would gladly donate the millions of dollars we make from doing this podcast to your next game. And speaking speaking of your next game, can you talk at all about what you're working on now?
Oh no, I can't.
I thought
Nice try, Tim. Nice try.
Yeah, the problem is I wanted to talk about it, but we are not at that legal stage where we can even talk about the project yet. It's pretty early in the project.
I understand. I had to try.
It's all about the secrets. It's all about the secrets.
I want to circle back for a second, and I think the guys have a few more questions for you as well, but I just want to circle back. You worked on Spore?
Yes.
Were you an employee of Maxis, or were you working on a contract basis? What was that relationship like?
Okay. So, that's how life is interesting this way. Well, basically, when I graduate, because I'm not an American citizen, I have to find a job, otherwise I have to go back to China. And we don't know if our pitch of cloud will ever get people agreed. So when I graduate, we start pitching the project on 2006 March. And so during that time, we were pitching, but the most company turns us down, right? The publishers say, well, we like your concept, but we don't know how to market this thing. Oh no, our customers are first-person shooter gamers. We don't think your game will work in our platform. Anyway, so I was talking to Kyle. We said, well, shall we give up, at this point, or shall we continue trying? And I said, we should continue trying, but I can't wait because I need to get a job. Otherwise, I have to leave this country. So at the time, the teacher who was in the business of interactive media class, Bing Gordon, the CCO of EA, was, talking to me. He says, Will Wright is very interested in your Flow game because I released Flow before I graduate, and it kind of gets his attention. And I think it was Will Wright, or maybe it was Chris Hacker, who sent me an email for a job interview. So I did go to interview with Maxis on Spore, because at the time Spore is like, if you're a designer, that's pretty much the only project you wish you could be working on.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So at the time I said, yeah, I think, they paid me a very good price and salary for someone who just come out of school, and with no problem, I get to work with Will Wright, the most brilliant guy. I just said, well, sure, then I go to work. And a couple of months after I start working, the deal we had with Sony is actually realized. So I was like, what should I do now? Right? But the contract, you need to work for there for at least a year. So that's basically what I did. We signed a contract with Sony, with Maxis, basically saying, while I'm still the co-founder of the company, I'm here working on Maxis project. And during this time, I should never work on anything that game company is working on. So that's the EA policy. So yeah, basically, I just never worked on Flow while people were there, at that game company was working on Flow, but I was working on Spore at Maxis. That's basically the story. And near the end of the Flow project, and that's also kind of like when the project I was working on, which is the DS version of Spore, I was working with an external developer called Amaze Entertainment, and then they were bought by Foundation 9. But at the time, I was working with them. They're based in Seattle on Spore game, and just at that time, it's pretty much like my design is completely kind of given to the local team at Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
I felt it was about a good time to leave. So I left EA Maxis and go back to that game company to basically start working on, the next game, which was Flower.
Genova, I did want to tell you on a personal level that I have greatly enjoyed your games. I really, really enjoyed Flow, and I really thought Flower was excellent. So I'm really glad that you had all of the lucky breaks that you had, and I'm glad that you're around. Listening and talking with you over this hour has been immensely satisfying, and I'm really glad that you agreed to come on the show. So thanks for your games, and thanks for spending time with us. It's been great for me.
Well, thank you very much, Brad. And as a critic, saying this to me means a lot more than a fans.
And I gave you good scores too, just so you know. I gave you high scores. So
thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I would. Oh, go ahead, G.
No, I was gonna echo what Brad said as well. Yeah, kind of as you were talking, I was just saying thank God for you guys, basically, that you guys are out there doing what you're doing, because
absolutely.
We need more.
I would echo that as well, and I have not played Flow, unfortunately, but I did play Flower. I don't own a PS3, but I went to play it at a friend's house last weekend because I knew we were doing this, so I finally got to sit down with it, and I have to be honest, before I had actually played Flower, I was one of those people that thought, well, I'm not sure if I really get what this game is about, but once you actually sit down and spend time with it, the idea of the motion controls is just beautifully implemented, and the style of the game is just overwhelming in its simplicity, but yet there's so much like artistic, I don't know, aesthetic design to it, the stuff that's happening. It's just really satisfying in a way that so few games are, and it's such a simple game at the same time. So, when I had asked you earlier about the, would you do a big game or a mainstream game or anything like that, I would totally be interested in seeing what you would do with something like a like a Killzone or something like that. But at the same time, I almost hope you just keep doing what you're doing, because I think it's something that gaming needs.
Yeah, too bad we're running out of time. Otherwise, I would be very interested in talking about, how the challenge of doing a bigger project, versus a small project will be. I mean, it's like creative direction is a lot harder when you have a lot more people to communicate. But yeah, I mean, we will see. I'm certainly interested in big
Well,
projects.
give us the short answer. Do you think it's possible?
Not in the recent years. Maybe in the future, because I think, when we make games, we always think about what is the value you're creating here, because we don't want to waste people's money and their time. You spend $60 and you spend 8 hours on something that was made by a group of people. That's a lot of responsibility. The more people play your game, the more time wasted in their life where they can be productive. So you better make something valuable, right?
I think you're the first developer we've ever heard say that, and it's very true. So thank you.
Right. So we were thinking about how can we create valuable things. Of course, our different people have different values, but like we, as a group, as that game company, we have our own values, not just my value, but the whole team's value. And we were very glad that you guys, all enjoyed the flower game. That's a sign, to prove that what we value has common. It is a common voice that a lot of people share, and we certainly will continue to create this kind of value for you guys. And that's like the biggest challenge for us is not solely it's not money, but whether we can make something valuable.
Mm-hmm. Well, keep up the good fight, man. Keep up the good fight.
Absolutely, please do.
Well,
All right.
Yeah, Genova, we have on this show long been champions of the independent developer and the downloadable space. So we hope that when you do announce your next game, as it approaches release, that you'll come back on and talk about it with us.
Sure, definitely.
Fantastic. Genova, if people want to follow you or that game company online, where can they do it? Do you have I know there's a website. Do you have a Twitter? Go ahead and...
Yes, there's a website which you can find a newsletter and our Facebook page for that game company. But if you want to follow Twitter, you can follow my Twitter, which is Genova Chen. There's no Genova Chen 1968 or something, just Genova Chen on Twitter. Right? So it's pretty easy to find me. Yeah.
Excellent.
Fantastic. Well, Genova Chen, thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Have a good day.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much, Genova.
And that will do it for this week's GameCritics.com podcast. As always, 3 ways to listen: the iTunes Music Store, the Zune Marketplace, or stream it directly off the GameCritics.com website. That's also where you can leave your feedback, your suggestions, your hopes, your dreams. So on behalf of Chi Kong Liu, Brad Gallaway, and Mike Bracken, I'm Tim Spaeth. Good night, and bon chance.